Karen Sigeman as the cleanup batter in your stead. So stay tuned for that, please. Before we do, we're going to go to the Middle East, as it happens, for two of our presenters' comments. We have Dr. David Wormser, who has been wending his way there for some days now. In fact, I think was supposed to arrive right about the time that the attack began on Iran a week or so ago. And he has finally made it to Israel. And we've interrupted his dinner, for which we're very grateful for you taking a few minutes. David, you are, of course, a PhD, a naval intelligence veteran, a man who has served with great distinction at the highest levels of the U.S. government, and supportive and Undersecretary of State, a national security advisor, and the Vice President of the United States in your various incarnations. You are these days a senior director with the Center for Security Policy, responsible for its Middle East program, and always an invaluable resource on, in particular, matters like this, where it involves not simply developments and challenges in the Middle East, but a more global perspective. We've asked you to talk about negotiating with the Iranian regime about anything aside from its unconditional surrender will amount to abandoning its victims and perpetuating their enslavement to the benefit of the CCP and to our detriment, among others. Over to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Frank. You know, it's interesting, the question of negotiating with the regime. When we started, let's put it this way, there's really two big problems with negotiating with the regime. The first one, in my view, is the one that Prime Minister Netanyahu raised, which is they cheat. They cheat and they lie. They've broken every agreement they've ever entered into, and they won't stop cheating. Despite the fact that for example, the Iran nuclear deal in 2016, or the JCPOA as it's called, there was supposed to have been verification and so forth. Clearly, the onus to deal with cheating is to take appropriate action. But instead, the onus is always on the people who pointed out the cheating, and it's essentially the onus is to come up with a new agreement to bring them in line and validate and codify the cheating, so at least it's, quote, under control, and therefore you can have some modicum of continued management of the situation. And we saw with Iran again and again and again, this doesn't work. Iran simply cheats in these agreements since day one. They have never really abandoned the path to a nuclear weapon, despite the NIE from 2007 or 6, whenever it was, by the United States. And all along, they know how to play diplomacy in such a way that when they need to stop testing something, and they need to go back to do some research on it, then they'll concede that for a little while, and we all think they're moderate and so forth. And they never are. They have had a linear, aggressive, unrelenting attempt to drive toward a nuclear weapon for the last 20 years at least. So that's number one. Number two, the problem with a deal like that is it signals the Iranian people something we shouldn't be signaling them. The Israelis are not in a regime change strategy war. It doesn't matter what some people are saying. The Israelis know they're not in the business of regime change. They are a small country. Iran is a very large country. It's 10 times the size of Israel in terms of population. Israel does not have the military power to take over Iran and install a government to its liking. It cannot do what the United States did in Iraq in 2004. And in many ways, the history of Iraq, the real history, has to still be written. It wasn't the original intent of many people to do it that way anyway. It was, unfortunately, I think there were some actors inside the Bush administration that made it a much more involved nation-building exercise than it should have been to begin with. But that said, we're not talking about Iraq here. We're talking about Iran. And in Iran's case, I think what Israel is doing is, of course, it has its rudimentary military objectives that it has to deal with, which are the nuclear program, the missile program, a whole bunch of nefarious activities by the whole panoply of things that Iran is doing. But the problem is that that in doing that, the Israeli actions to take all that down also involve destruction of C2, destruction of the command and control structure, destruction of a good bit of leadership, and it as a byproduct. And the Israelis have this as an intentional byproduct, but it is not the goal of the war, which is it creates a favorable environment that if the Iranian people want to have a revolution, want to get rid of their government, and want to take back their country. And I say take back because everything we see more or less indicates that the Iranians hate their government. If they want to, the Israelis have provided them the best opportunity in generations to do so. And there's every indication the Iranians will grab that opportunity. It will take a little time, but they'll grab it. The problem is the moment you enter negotiations, the Iranian people are scared because they think that at the end of the day, they will be sacrificed at the altar of another agreement. They have been before. There's no reason for them not to think that they will be. And as a result, what will happen is that the Iranians are going to stay quiet. They're going to wait and see because the last thing they want is an agreement to be signed on the nuclear issue, even the nuclear and missile issue. And then all of a sudden they're left high and dry, and the regime, which is horribly weakened, it's lost all its image of omnipotence. It's lost its confidence, and it's shown itself not to be a thug, but really impotent, truly unable to function. Those are death. Those are three pillars of a regime. If failing, it's death for the regime, such as that. And that is where Iran's going. So the Iranian people know that. They're ready to revolt, in my view. But the problem is the moment that we say that we're going to sign a deal, that the end goal of this is a deal, then the Iranian people they realize the government will be left in place and they will come after them with such a vengeance and cruelty that they have to reestablish their omnipotence, their terror, and their confidence. And that will be paid in the price of Iranian blood. So the Iranians are looking and they're saying, until we hear clear signs that Israel's going all the way and America will let it, and there won't be an agreement, I don't think the Iranians feel confident enough yet. So, and that's the real wages of constantly dealing with Iran as a normal government, or even as an abnormal government, but as an interlocutor. You validate the government, and that's the currency the Iranian regime always needs to survive. So that is why, in many ways, negotiating with them won't help. It will cause a lot of damage.
David, thank you. Excellent presentation as always. Hope you get back to your dinner and do so safely. We